All right, and we're going live on Facebook, Ron. We're 2 minutes to live on the air. We just get to Facebook going a little bit, or YouTube, I'm sorry, rather.
I was just wondering, we're not doing Facebook.
No.
Alacran, Jorge Alacran was
All right, and are you done? We got to shut this door here, Steve. So
yeah, let me
get out. You're either in or you're out.
yeah, I can hear you. Damn, that's a big delay. Shit.
Welcome to the modern YouTube world here.
Yeah, I was reading on there about the latency and you can adjust it and all of that. But yeah, the more we plug stuff in, the more latency we get.
So are you good? Can I shut down? You're just gonna
No,
kind of be
go
like
ahead.
a little.
Yeah, I'm just gonna be like a
bird in
little
here.
Myrmitite going around. I'm gonna do this while you're doing that.
All right, Ron, stand by.
I'm in the video feed there.
You're gonna be. You better get out.
Wait till you go to the break. Then I'll run this.
All right, stand by. We are connected to the live server. We are recording. And Ron, you're live.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Chi-Town Expat Show with your host, Ron Harders. And this afternoon, say happy St. Patrick's Day to you. Aaron Gobra. And have a wonderful day and wear green. I seem to have forgotten that today, but I guess I can be green with envy. In any case, our government is in a state of crisis. At least the establishment portion of it is. And these people are just at their wits' end and don't know what to do with Mr. Trump. And I was so happy to see that the latest firing from the FBI took place. Mr. McCabe is gone and without a pension until at least some federal judge, some liberal judge awards it to him. But there was no reason why we have to pay a traitor to the country a pension for the next minimum of 20 years. He's only 50. He's going to, he probably lived till 70 unless somebody assassinates him. Which isn't probably likely, although who knows these days. Read something the other day that was interesting. It was about Saul Alinsky. If you don't know about Saul Alinsky, you might want to read his Rules for Radicals. It's a book that he wrote in the last century. I think it was in the either the 70s or the 80s. And in it, he specified 13 rules for radicals to take over the electoral process and the government. And one of them, he's saying that it's rule number 4, make the enemy live up to their own book of rules. Now that's something that we should use against the left ourselves, because using this tool is especially effective, Saul Alinsky says, because no one can always live up to their own set of rules. This is especially true for today's supporters of big government. The same people who preach tolerance try to stifle free speech. The same people who claim to fight for the little guy support policies that benefit big businesses and hurt entrepreneurs and families. Exposing hypocrisy is one of the most powerful weapons you can have in the fight for freedom. And here are some of the ways you can put this rule into practice. Call out hypocrisy. All too often, big government supporters say one thing and do another. Don't let them get away with it. If a lawmaker says that they stand with working families but oppose legislation that would keep taxes lower, call them out on it. If a group says they care about students but support one-size-fits-all policies that keep children trapped in failed schools, make your voice heard. Adapt your message. Think about why you hold the position you do on an issue. You can change how you talk about your stance on an issue that forces your opponent to either agree with you or contradict themselves. Fighting for occupational licensing reform because it's too much government regulation may be a convincing argument for people who are already on your side. But if you're going up against big government supporters, that's not the best approach. Big government advocates like to claim their policies are best for the poor. They say they hate big business. They say they stand for justice. Make them live up to those beliefs. Talk about how occupational licenses keep people trapped in poverty. Make the case for the inherent injustice of licensing. Highlight how occupational licensing protects big established companies and hurts local entrepreneurs. Now your opponents have two choices: agree with you or throw in their lot with the people who keep poor people in poverty and side with big business. Nothing destroys credibility like being exposed as a hypocrite. Don't be afraid to call your opponents out when they don't live up to their rules. And that's one way to use Alinsky's rules for radicals against our opponents, the left. Now, a little thing about government waste. And you know, there's plenty of it that goes around. A government-funded study showing that sugar makes tomatoes tasty was crowned 2017's most wasteful use of tax dollars, an accountability group announced Friday. Pursuit, a nonprofit former Oklahoma Republican Senator Tom Coburn founded, started its bracket-style tournament of government waste Monday, where readers could vote to decide which use of taxpayer money was the most wasteful. The competition weighed 4 findings Coburn and 3 senators reported on. A steady Republican Kentucky Senator Rand Paul ultimately took the crown. The National Science Foundation spent more than $1.5 million to improve tomatoes' taste and found that modern tomatoes don't taste as good because they have less sugar, according to a report the Kentucky Republican released in March 2017. Now, I have grown tomatoes in my backyard, and let me tell you that homegrown tomatoes that are not sprayed with all kinds of gunk and from hybrid seeds, which have uh, well, all the taste has been removed from them, are no comparison to homegrown tomatoes. My tomatoes, although they were cherry tomatoes, were 10 times as juicy and as tasty as the ones we bought in the store. A NASA program that spent 1.1 million to prepare religious groups for the discovery of an alien life came in second. Senator Jeff Flake, an Arizona Republican, reported on the program in January 2017. He would be from outer space. Two of Oklahoma Republican Senator James Lankford's submissions ended in the quarterfinals. One was a $30,000 National Endowment for the Arts grant for a performance of Hamlet, where people yelled and ran at sheep and dogs. And the other was a $1 billion Department of Transportation award to a nearly 11-mile trolley that serves less than 25,000 people a day. Kind of like the light rail in Phoenix. And I see that, by the way, our representative from the South down here is fighting that all the way. And he would like to see that $30 billion being used to improve our infrastructure in Phoenix, because the streets are falling apart and it's just terrible. The Tournament of Government Waste matters because the national debt is over 20 trillion. And we have over 100 trillion in unfunded liabilities. And hundreds of failing and duplicative government programs that will burden future generations, Pursuit's website said. Building consensus on areas like waste, fraud, and duplication can be a great starting point for bigger reforms. It continued. Not only is this tournament fun and informative, but also promotes conversation on what our country's priorities should be. And we'll see you in the next segment, and give you a little more about government waste.
And you are clear, sir. 2 minutes and 46 seconds. It's good stuff, bud. Keep it coming.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. It's good. Do you ever have guests? You ever bring anybody in?
Yeah, I've got to get a
sometimes?
hold of Moses Sanchez.
Oh, there you go.
And I think next week I'm going to try and get him for next week,
Okay.
if not the week after.
Very cool. I like him.
Yeah, he makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. He's got a good history, too. We're in the same business, actually.
Yeah,
He also does digital advertising and
Yeah.
social media marketing. So
Now, I tell you what, I got, do you get the Phoenix Business Journal?
No.
I'll start giving it to you. I've been giving them to Julia. And I also have a connection to their book of lists, which is all of the Phoenix businesses that are top 10 or better.
Right.
And it's like $75 for the 2018 one.
Okay.
So I'll send you the connection for that.
No, it's a good. I've used to read it. I had other people I worked with that used to get it. It was really good. We're about 30 seconds out.
Okay.
I can also talk to you through here. Can you hear me in your headset?
Not really.
Not
No.
really. It's kind of low, but eventually this
Oh,
is
yeah,
going to be so
yeah.
I can talk to you on the headset.
Okay.
Because we're going to be out there pretty soon. So. You're back.
Oh, we're ready to go? The ideal of political authority is to create a public mind that is a mirror image of the pretense of government. This is a perfect crime against human liberty. The first cause of government is and can only be suppression of our human nature and loss of our identity as human beings and individuals. Hence, government authority and propaganda seek to fade the individual into group consciousness. Altruistic philosophy and self-denial is the government propaganda used in this process. Governments must destroy the identity of the individual and subvert him to the mass conscience and control by the state. Carefully chosen words by the establishment are the basis of mass mind control, leading to acceptance of force. Until the people accept collectivism under some pretext, they are not docile and completely subdued. Words are created and repeated, which expands the collective psyche to accept and repeat some more. People who freely use those terms are not in control of their own thinking process. Totalitarian regimes are successful when they have created a system of conventional wisdom in which their subjects acquire and remain in a state of confusion. This confusion is achieved when individuality is completely surrendered to the collective and reality is distorted by propaganda that creates two opposing thoughts which the masses accept as fact. George Orwell called this doublethink. Orwell described it in 1984 this way. To know and not to know. To be conscious of complete truthfulness while telling carefully constructed lies. To hold simultaneously two opinions which canceled out, knowing them to be contradictory and believing in both of them, to use logic against logic, to repudiate morality while laying claim to it, to believe that democracy was impossible and that the party was the guardian of democracy, to forget whatever it was necessary to forget, then to draw it back into memory again at the moment when it was needed, and then promptly to forget it again. And above all, to apply the same process to the process itself. That was the ultimate subtlety, consciously to induce unconsciousness, and then once again to become unconscious of the act of hypnosis you had just performed. Even to understand the word doublethink involved the use of doublethink. The power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them to tell deliberate lies while genuinely believing in them, to forget any fact that has become inconvenient, and then, when it becomes necessary again, to draw it back from oblivion for just as long as it is needed, to deny the existence of objective reality, and all the while to take account of the reality which one denies. All this is indispensably unnecessary. Even in using the word doublethink, it is necessary to exercise doublethink. For by using the word, one admits that one is tampering with reality. By a fresh act of doublethink, one erases this knowledge, and so on indefinitely, with the lie always one leap ahead of the truth. And boy, don't our politicians engage in that activity today. The more the individual is diminished into crowd consciousness, the easier to develop the psyche of self-sacrifice to the state. Self-sacrifice means a willingness to surrender your rights for some fictional notion of safety, die in foreign wars, or a willingness to transfer your labor and wealth to the government under the fiction of income tax, social security tax, or inheritance tax. All governments use this psychological phenomenon to their advantage. This phenomenon was on display last Wednesday, March 14th, when students across the country walked out of school in a protest against guns and for school safety. No doubt, every tyrant in history gave a rousing huzzah, and all the founding fathers wept at the demonstration of hive mind collectivism on display. It was one of those rare times in American history when so many have at one time clamored so loudly to have their rights stripped from them outright. Following are some examples of doublethink that are common today. Anyone under 21 is mentally and emotionally incapable of purchasing or owning a weapon. High school students should direct our policies on gun control. President Donald Trump is a dictator and a tyrant. Trump and Congress need to buck the NRA and take away our guns. President Donald Trump is a dictator and a tyrant. Trump and Congress need to buck the NRA and take away our guns. President Donald Trump is a dictator and a tyrant. Trump and Congress need to buck the NRA and take away our guns. That seems to be a repeating mantra. Police are over-militarized and violent and are disproportionately targeting minorities. Only police should have guns. Children should stay on their parents' health insurance until age 26. Preteen and teenage children are capable of choosing their own gender and deciding to have an abortion without parental consent. Russia is our enemy. Russia is backing the NRA and wants more Americans to be armed. Now, we are the most conditioned, programmed beings the world has ever known. Not only are our thoughts and attitudes continually being shaped and molded, but our very awareness of the whole design has been erased. Few question anything. One important thought here: a person's IQ or education level has absolutely nothing to do with his perception of reality. Higher education is higher brainwashing. Sometimes it seems that the more education, the bigger the fool. The only escape from tyranny is mental freedom, a transition from the unconscious to the conscious mind. Mental freedom precedes physical freedom. Mental freedom is not a fragment of idealism or philosophy. It delivers peace of mind and unlimited prosperity to the individual right under the nose of oppressive government. To escape oppressive government is to escape the thought system into which we are born. We need to be aware of the power of doublethink and how the authorities, seen and unseen, use it if we are to strive for a transition back to consciousness and self-realization. Political doctrines which offer automatic answers and lifetime guidance without the effort of using our conscious minds and individual self-esteem are false. They are ploys for power over our lives and our total existence, including our earned assets and wealth. It is all mass hypnosis that we have mistaken for political and mental freedom. And so that explains the double talk, the doublethink of the politicians and the elites that want to control all of us. And I think it's time that we woke up and began to hold the liars responsible for their lies and to expose them and vote them out of office. And instead of simply voting for somebody because they have an R and a D behind, or a D behind their name, to look at every candidate and try to determine whether or not they are American in their views and whether they want America first or not. So we'll be back in the next segment, and see you then for the
You're good. You're clear.
well, the rest of it's going to be,
Just kind of commentary.
yeah.
Understood. Yeah, so just to kind of give you a heads up, normally on the bump out, I'll play the music, but when I bring you back in, you just go straight in.
Oh,
You know, only on the intro, we usually do the music bump in.
okay.
So. I know that caught you by surprise a little bit.
Yeah.
We'll get it though. We'll make it nice and smooth and then of course if you want, you get ad space too. So if you want to run any ads and stuff,
Yeah.
just have them, either they can send them finished to me
Okay.
or I can charge somebody to make them for them. You
Okay.
know what I mean? Or, the business can provide them to you in a complete fashion. MP3 or WAV format is fine.
Okay.
A lot happened this last week there, huh? I'm happy. The signal that got sent with this FBI firing made me very, very happy. Because think about if you're in the FBI right now and you are even thinking about being involved in some things, you're just like, I'm not losing my pension over this, because that's now at stake. So
Well, some
And it should
liberal
have been.
judge is gonna,
maybe, maybe not. They say that if they bring that to court, then they might get more information out of him than they already have. So they said he may choose to not do that because there was a discovery process. So if he does challenge it, now they played right into their hands, see? Because now they get to go and find more stuff on him to show
Okay.
why he should have been released.
Okay.
And it'll air it all out in the open. So,
Oh, yeah.
pretty
Well,
interesting.
It's time.
All right, we're 10 seconds.
Hey, we're back. And it's a beautiful St. Patrick's Day here in Phoenix. As we were driving over to the studio, it was 72 degrees. And that sure beats whatever it is in Chi-Town, New York, or any of those other cold cities. We were just discussing Mr. McCabe again. And it's a good thing that he did get fired. And I don't think he's going to probably go back to court. Because that will give them, the Trumpers, the ability to go in and do some discovery. And they might then find a whole bunch of other stuff that will say that he should have been fired long ago. On top of that, there's a whole bunch of people in the FBI and in government per se who, rather than sacrifice their pensions, will probably say they don't want to get involved in any more shenanigans because that can lead to their not being pensioned. Oh, boy, could we save a lot of money. In a way, we kind of hope they do go to court because I think they would lose their butts. And boy, oh boy, it couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people. Anti-American from the get-go. Yeah, they all talk about Russia being our enemy, but they play right into the Russians' hands, especially when our friend Hillary sold out 20% of our uranium to Russia for a sellout to her husband and the Clinton Foundation. And that's another thing. When are we going to get her? When are we going to get her in jail? Because she certainly needs to go there. I mean, no matter whether her health is failing or not, But there's too many people today still who think that she is the be all and end all, that she is the guide to women today. And she goes across the world to India and continues to talk about Americans as deplorables, that we're not worthy of any kind of consideration from her. Now that speaks to me of the same kind of person that Stalin was, or Hitler was, or Pol Pot was, that if you don't agree with her, you could just pass away and she'll help you to do that. So I don't know where these people get these ideas from, but certainly that's not a respect for Christianity, which, by the way, I just saw a lady who was a refugee, Christian refugee from Iran, and she's living in Sweden. And she is not allowed to speak about anything negative about the Muslim religion, or she will be sent back. And in fact, they are planning on sending her back to Iran, whether or not she has any protection from the problems that she would face there. Problem being thrown in jail or murdered or both. And it's just and this from the Swedish government. They won't protect Christians. So what is wrong with them? And the Muslims go around and hate everybody who's not a Muslim. In fact, they can't even stand. There's 3 basic sects of Muslims, and not one of them can stand either of the other 2. And they will just as soon murder a member of the other 2 as they would a Christian, a Jew, or anybody else. And if you leave Islam, you're automatically targeted for death. Isn't that wonderful? That's, and they call us the religion of peace. Now, where is our politicians and our government employees who are advocating that this is the religion of peace? Take Great Britain, for instance. They're doing human trafficking. Now, what is human trafficking? It's selling young girls and boys into the sex trade and taking vulnerable kids, some as young as 11 years old or even younger, and turning them into prostitutes. Not because they are, but because they have been fooled into that lifestyle and threatened with death, covered with gasoline, and threatened to be set on fire if they say anything or do anything. And guess what? The police are too afraid to say anything about it because they will be berated and treated badly by the politicians in their in Britain. It's a shame. What's going on? Is this how the Muslims conquered Spain in the early years of Islam? Is this the same kind of foolishness that the Vichy French took on when they supported Hitler over the French Republic? My goodness, what are we doing these days? It's time, folks, that we stood up, looked around, and opened our eyes and began to stop listening to the lies and believing the lies. Because really, that's what it doesn't make any sense. Now, Stalin once said that he could, no doubt, held the rope to the capitalist who would make a big profit, knowing that that rope would be used to hang him on Sunday, and the sale would happen on Friday. Now, are they that blind? Are these big shots that blind that they have to sell out the rest of us so that they can be the big shots? And only until the Islamists come and use the noose on them, only that this time it won't be a noose, it'll be a scimitar, and it'll cut their heads off. So we'll be back. One more to go, right?
Mm-hmm. I'll throw together a little show intro and ID for you, kind of warm into it. Got a lot of little things to do.
Well, I like Julian. I think he had a lot of big ideas, but no money.
It's tough, money is it's got to be sustainable is part of the issue, and he was doing things relatively cheap to the point where, your own time, like I bill my customers probably in the 150 an hour to 275 range in my normal, what I do for a living, and, to sit and do this, like, is not something that I will continue to do myself. Like, I'm working actually we're trying to get people from the recording college to send me some interns, and they can pretty much run the gear, and I can
Yeah.
pay them to come in and do it, and so with the new shows that we take on, we just have to make sure that it covers the cost. But then at the same time, you guys need to be able to have part of the advertising, because if it's sponsored content, then you have to have some of the retainment of some of the ad space, so.
Oh, how much are you gonna charge for ads?
I mean, I haven't really put a lot of numbers together on that yet, but,
I don't know what to ask for, you know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, probably maybe $50 a 30-second spot or something like that,
Okay,
That's probably what I do, 25 or $50, So if somebody, all right, we're coming back in here. Give me a second. You're good.
all right, we're back. And we're back for the final segment of the day, and which will lead up to a show that I know you're going to like. It's called Chips and Salsa, and they do a lot of things that and actually have some guests at times. And I will be doing the same thing. In fact, next week I'm going to try and get a hold of Moses Sanchez, who is running for mayor of Phoenix, and he was at our LD27 it went 2 weeks ago, or last week. And anyway, he is quite a guy. And I was very impressed with him. I think it's the kind of people that we need. The thing about it is, though, the ones that I get impressed with more than anything else, and the ones that seem to want to do more than anything else, are actually immigrants, real legal immigrants to this country. They came here with the idea that they would have the freedom to do what they wanted to do with their life, that they could make something out of themselves, that they could become whatever they desired. And that's nowhere in the world is that like here it is here. Now, I have a lot of had a lot of relatives in Germany, and most of them are dead now, except I have one cousin that's ancient. And he was funny. He worked. His main job was selling cars. He sold Opels in Idar Oberstein, Germany, and he sold most of his cars to Americans. There was an American base there, and another one close. And most of the cars he sold were to Americans, and he spoke to a lot of Americans in the military and so on. And his wife, who was my true cousin, she was more of a socialist and had been raised in the schools during Hitler's time, but had not gotten the exposure to the Americans that her husband had. And he turned out to be a real right winger and a guy that understood America and Americans better than anybody that I met in Germany. So it's an amazing thing when you see people living in countries elsewhere who desire to come to America not for the freebies, not for the free stuff, but to make something good out of themselves. And they do it legally. And then there are those who come here to make, to get onto the welfare rolls. They haven't done anything in their own country to make themselves worthwhile. And they think that they can actually come here and live at our expense. And so far they can. And the reason for it is because the Democrat Party wants them to be Democrat voters. But it's kind of funny. The ones that come here legally don't seem to be Democrats. They seem to be Republicans all the way. And it's time that we encourage that. And how do we do that? I'm not sure. But we can use your ideas. And if you would, email me at B as in boy, ARONAZ@msn.com. Love to hear from you. Love to know what you're thinking. And maybe we can get some kind of a movement going that'll support Mr. Trump and the Republicans that really are Republicans and not dids. And by that I mean Democrats in disguise. So let's hear from you. Let's work on this. Let's clean up the courts. Let's clean up the government. Let's make things better for America and make America first again. After all, we were the only ones that survived the Second World War and supported just about every other country in the world afterwards, including the Soviet Union. And I never had heard this years ago, but it's coming out more and more in the current times that FDR, our supposedly most wonderful president, who gave us the New Deal, which was really nothing but a collectivist scheme. And he was not a president that was for America. He thought that socialism and collectivism were the way to go. And that he thought that Mr. Stalin was a wonderful man, even though he was a murderer of millions. In fact, he murdered so many between him and Mao Zedong, they made Hitler look like a biker. And really, it's time that we quit listening to the government lies as I said in my second segment today, and started thinking without double think. I'm not sure how you go about that, but it's probably a good thing to take everything that you hear from the mainstream media, everything that you hear from government, and assume it's incorrect. Not necessarily that it's a lie, just incorrect. So until next week, we'll see you again. That it?
Yep.
All righty.
Good job, buddy. You went the whole stretch.